It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the shocking radicalisation of an autistic teenager who took her own life after she was investigated by MI5. Rhiannon Rudd was groomed by two American white supremacists, one of whom was her mother's boyfriend. Today, a coroner listed the missed chances to save her. Her mother says she was let down by the authorities. Also tonight, a major U-turn from the government on the winter fuel payment. Pensioners earning £35,000 or less will now be eligible. That's around 9 million people in England and Wales, more than 3/4 of all pensioners. A plastic surgeon jailed for life for stabbing his former boss. Peter Brooks stabbed Graham Perks and left him for dead after trying to set fire to his house. And tributes are paid to Uriah Rennie, the first black referee in Premier League history, after his death at the age of 65. All that to come and much more here on the UK Tonight. But first tonight, the inquest into the death of an autistic girl who took her own life after she was investigated for terrorism offences has revealed shocking details of her radicalisation. Rhiannon Rudd was groomed by two American white supremacists, one of whom was her mum's boyfriend. She died in a children's home after her mum reported her for claiming that she wanted to blow up a synagogue. Today, a coroner listed the missed chances to save Rhiannon. Her mother says the authorities must be held accountable. I should warn you that this report from our Home Editor Jason Farrell contains references to suicide and other details you may find distressing.
Rhiannon Rudd was funny, quirky, but troubled. She was the youngest girl to be charged for terrorism offences in the UK, aged 15, and later took her own life. Her autism made her impressionable, and during lockdown she met the wrong guy online.
Being on the computer for so long and being autistic, she was just like a sponge, you know. Whatever somebody was telling her, she would believe it, even if it was a cartoon. She would watch it and go, oh my gosh, is that real? I could hear her talking to people on there, but I'd say, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm just so-and-so from school. When in fact, when I found out, it wasn't at all. She just told me that this guy, Chris, had left her and she was totally in love with him. And a couple of days after that, she came down and told me that she downloaded a bomb manual, and I was just like, oh my gosh. What have you been doing?
Chris Cook was an American white supremacist who would later be charged in the US for plotting to blow up power stations. The coroner said his influence in radicalising Rhiannon was significant. After meeting him online, she became obsessed with Hitler, gouged a swastika into her forehead and told her mother she wanted to blow up a synagogue. Cook's lawyer in Ohio says his client said he was in an online relationship with Rhiannon.
The suggestion is that he radicalised her. Do you see it that way?
I really don't know what they were talking about. My understanding from him is that it was her stepfather that was really involved in radicalising her, and it was that common background that brought them together. But, I think ultimately she found him because of the stepfather.
The so-called stepfather was Rhiannon's mother's boyfriend, Dax Maliburn, who she befriended through a US prison pen pal scheme. They've since broken up. The inquest into Rhiannon's suicide looked at what happened after her mother referred her to Prevent.
I thought putting her in a de-radicalisation programme, it would have been a fairly easy undo brain pick, if you like. But it wasn't until the police all started turning up, wanting a computer, wanting this, that I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, this is a lot deeper than I actually believed it at first.
Her mother says the authorities failed to recognise her vulnerabilities, that she was a victim of exploitation. Instead, she says counter-terrorism police were heavy-handed.
There was 19 police officers to arrest a 5'1", 14-year-old who weighs 7 stone. There was just, it was over the top.
The coroner found both the MI5 and counter-terrorism police investigations were proportionate and appropriate. She said a difficult balance had to be struck between recognising Rhiannon's vulnerabilities and protecting the public.
This ruling found there were failings in Rhiannon's access to mental health support and by police not referring her to the modern slavery programme. But another clear lesson was that extremists will exploit vulnerable children without care for the risk to society or the child themselves. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
And if you've been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans at any time. The number is 116 123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. Now, we knew last month that the government was planning a U-turn on the winter fuel payment. Today, we found out quite how major a U-turn it actually is. 9 million pensioners in England and Wales will now be eligible. Anyone earning £35,000 or less. That's 75% of all pensioners. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the government has listened to people's concerns. The Conservatives are calling it a humiliating climb down. Sky's Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates has this report.
Just less than a year ago, the Chancellor walked into the biggest, most difficult decision of her career, cutting winter fuel payments for most pensioners. On the day, she told me why it had to be done.
It's not an easy decision to announce that winter fuel payment would only go to people receiving pensioner credit, but it is the right decision in the circumstances in which we find ourselves.
Fast forward to May, and it was that decision blamed for a dreadful night in the local elections. A month later, and now she says she's listened and will reinstate payments for 9 million out of the 10 million pensioners.
From this winter, 9 million pensioners will now receive winter fuel payments. It will be still means tested, but at a higher level.
Interview after interview, a succession of difficult questions.
I was always clear that the number one priority of this government was to return stability to the economy. We did that with a number of difficult decisions, but because of those decisions, our public finances are now in a better position.
Isn't it verging on fake news to claim that the economy is substantially better? The OBR halved growth in March. The OECD downgraded Britain just a week ago. It's just not true that we're in a better position.
Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility increased the growth forecast for every other year.
There's a pattern post-local elections. The Labour left shouts and you crumble. Winter fuel gone without you telling us how you're going to pay for it. Two-child benefit cap being junked. Disability cuts softened. You're cosplaying fiscal discipline. Isn't this the worst nightmare of the markets? They are learning that you can't say no to your MPs.
I set out the spending envelope in the budget and the spring statement and we'll be setting out the spending settlements for every government department based on that envelope that we set in the budget and the spring statement. And markets and the public will be able to see public services living within their means, living within the totals that we set out this week.
Opponents call it an embarrassment.
The most humiliating climb down a government has ever faced in its first year in office.
This is a Chancellor who has been spooked by her own side, blowing a black hole of up to £1 billion in the budget that she's going to have to fill, probably with tax rises in the autumn, not the run-up to a spending review that any Chancellor would have wanted. Is Rachel Reeves a good Chancellor, Paul?
Rachel Reeves has, to be fair to her, inherited a really difficult situation. I think the error, if she's made an error, is she left herself so little space for manoeuvre in the budget back in October.
Will she now be forgiven by pensioners and forgiven by ex-Labour voters? Could this week be the one that leaves more people smiling on the Chancellor? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Now, more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill, calling it a threat to patients and medics. The bill, which will be debated once again in the Commons this Friday, would allow terminally ill patients to end their lives if they have less than 6 months left to live. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has this next report.
Doctors, over 1,000 of them adding their voices against the assisted dying bill.
This
current bill is simply not safe. There are inadequate safeguards against coercion. We know that a very small number of coercion cases eventually go through to prosecution. It's very hard to spot.
Do you not believe that this legislation has more safeguards than any piece of legislation before it? Do you simply not accept that?
Surely the question here is, are the safeguards good enough? And you have in front of you a letter from over 1,000 doctors that have said the safeguards aren't enough.
In a letter sent to MPs, they say, as experienced medical professionals who regularly work with dying patients and who have reviewed the worldwide evidence on assisted dying, it is our opinion that this bill poses a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce, and we urge you to vote against it. But Dr. David Nicol is a medical professional who has worked with dying patients, and he disagrees with his clinical colleagues.
Doctors are actually no different than the public in that there are a wide range of opinions on this. There are 395,000 doctors in the UK, so the fact that 1,000 doctors disagree with assisted dying, and probably always will, actually should not be a surprise.
So the medical community, like wider society, remains divided. But ultimately, neither will decide. Yes, they can influence their MPs, but when the bill returns to Parliament, it will be up to the politicians who will have their say on whether or not to introduce the biggest social change to this country that many of us will ever see in our lifetimes. And some MPs are already reconsidering their position.
I abstained on the first time round. I decided I wasn't going to vote because I wanted to hear the debate. Of course, I don't want anybody to feel that they're a burden on society and feel that that should lead them towards taking their own life. But I also have heard the cries of people who are absolutely miserable, and that's why I will be voting for the bill.
Daniel Francis has a daughter who has cerebral palsy, and he's worried about safeguards.
I support the principle of assisted dying, but I don't believe this bill, as it is fit for purpose. I'm the parent of a child who has very complex disabilities, including a learning disability, and I believe that the Mental Capacity Act was not written for this scenario.
But your daughter would be safeguarded against assisted dying.
My daughter would be safeguarded simply because of the level of mental capacity she has. The principles of the Mental Capacity Act, I believe, will lead to scenarios where somebody with a learning disability will go through this process without their family member being aware and could well be assisted by the doctor to make this decision.
This debate will rage on for the next 2 weeks and beyond. Rightly so. This is literally a decision about life and death. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Just want to bring you some breaking news regarding the yacht that was carrying activists trying to reach Gaza. We've just had this from the Israeli Foreign Ministry. They've posted this on the social media platform X. They say the selfie yacht, as they have dubbed it, has docked at Ashdod port a short while ago. The passengers are currently undergoing medical examinations to ensure that they are in good health. It carries there a picture of the activist Greta Thunberg, who was on board that boat, alongside Thiago Alvia as well, another activist on board that yacht. But it is now docked in a port in Israel, and those passengers, including the two individuals there, are undergoing medical examinations. More on that as we get it. Right, let's return to assisted dying now. It's back in the Commons this Friday for debate. Baroness Finlay joins me now, Professor of Palliative Care and a signatory of that letter to MPs, that open letter. Good of us to join you. Good of you to join us this evening to discuss this. Talk to me about the serious concerns that you and other people have outlined in this letter today. What are they?
The concern is that this bill will harm more people than it will help. It doesn't help patients. They're not really safeguards. They're just vague qualifying conditions that are in the bill. You cannot predict how long someone has to live. We know that about 1 in 5 people, the diagnosis is actually, there's an error in it. And the big problem is coercion. And we know that the way the bill is set up, this is not going to detect coercion and coercive control. For families, the first that they may know that their relative has gone down the route of taking lethal drugs is when they get a phone call to say, could they collect the body? There's no requirement for the family to be involved. The judge has been removed and the panel only have to hear from one doctor and from the patient, but they've got no powers to ask questions or to go into anything in depth. And the only doctor on the panel is the psychiatrist. And we know the College of Psychiatrists have come out against it. And I've heard, and this is on the grapevine, so I haven't seen it in writing yet, that it looks as if the College of Physicians are also going to say that this bill is not safe enough. This bill has got too many loopholes in it.
Well, we wait for official word from the College of Physicians. You mentioned coercion there, and another signatory to the letter, Professor Colin Rees, was interviewed by our health correspondent Arsha Joshi in the report that was on just before we got the chance to speak. And he said, coercion, as you said, is very hard to spot, yet it's being used as a major argument in your letter. Just how big a problem do you think this would be?
I think coercion is a huge problem. Families may be exhausted with caring for somebody. They may want their hands on their inheritance. They may be fed up with paying for care costs that they have to pay for. But the problem is, too, that we as healthcare professionals can think about the number of times we've been taken in. We thought it was a loving family, and it turns out that they weren't at all. And they'd persuaded someone to change their will, write out their natural children, and leave it to whoever's the new partner.
You've seen this firsthand?
Yes, I've seen it firsthand. I've been taken in. The hospice that I've set up and ran for many decades, the whole hospice was taken in on several occasions by families that we really thought were loving families. And then we discovered that either the life insurance policy had expired or that the will had been changed. The families wanted their hands on the inheritance.
Would you say that was a small number of families? Because what I'm trying to get here is, you know, the parameters of this bill, to a certain extent, are pretty clear. That patient has to be terminally ill, with mental capacity, with 6 months to live, which, as you said yourself, is very hard to determine. So that, again, narrows the number. It's not, you know, for people who are old with families who are concerned about bills, and it's not for people with disabilities.
It doesn't actually narrow the number, because the problem is that you might think someone looks as if they're going to die in 6 months, but actually they may live for years after that, and there are diagnostic errors. But the other problem...
But what's their quality of life for those years? Because Esther Ransom, who obviously you know is a very public supporter of this, given that she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, she said the choice is to shorten death, not to shorten life. And that, for so many people who support this bill, is the key argument.
One of the things that is really important is that we've just had a commission on palliative care. We know that palliative care provision around the country is patchy. There is really good evidence that specialist palliative care can transform the quality of life of people and can take them from being...
coming any time soon, does it?
Well, I think that that should be a priority for the government, and it costs less to provide excellent specialist palliative care than it does to carry on doing things not properly as they are at the moment, when you have patients waiting for hours in A&E, inappropriate admissions. I can understand why people are frightened. You can see why they're frightened, because they're worried they're not going to get the care that they need to live well and die peacefully and gently at the time that they can just let go of life.
Could you support this bill in principle if the practical elements then were better?
I think this bill should be totally rewritten, and then we need to have another look, think again. But this bill, as written, is not going to do what it claims it does. It doesn't even mention suffering or pain in the bill. It's as if they're nothing to do with the situation. Now, if you are going to do something about people who are frightened of pain and worried about suffering, you must make sure that they get the care that they need, when they need it, the right time, the right care, and then you must make sure that the support structures are in place for them.
What would you say to those who are watching tonight who, you know, we've spoken to many families on this programme, particularly when it comes to motor neurone disease. A lot of the focus seems to be around that because of the cruel nature of the end of living with MND. Families like the Clark family, Lottie, whose husband James made that journey to Switzerland without her, the Shackleton family, Lou took her husband Anthony to Dignitas. They say that for those living with MND, this is their choice and this is how they would want to end their life because they know for certain that their death will not be peaceful, it will be painful.
Well, death with MND doesn't have to be painful, and I think in a way that's a sad indictment of our services, that they're not there, because looking after patients with MND can be actually very rewarding and very enriching and help them to live, but accept when they're dying and support them during that last phase of their life without them having to feel that they have to go off to take lethal drugs abroad or even to have to do that here. So I think we have to get the system right, we have to get the care right. The problem too is that you do not know what you do not know. And I'm really worried that we've got some doctors who think that they know a lot about looking after these patients, but who have a lot to learn. And we have a lot of families who think that everything has been done that could be done, when actually there's a lot more that could be done to improve quality of life. Palliative care neither hastens death, nor does it postpone death. This isn't about making people live longer. This is about doing all that you can to maximise quality of life and accept when death comes, it comes.
Barris Finlay, Professor of Palliative Medicine and a cross-bench member of the House of Lords, one of the signatories of those 1,000 doctors writing to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Let's go straight to Washington now. President Donald Trump is speaking. Let's listen in.
A country we just spoke about, Iran. I think you should negotiate this. You might be better. I think I'm going to send you today. What a good idea. This could have been the idea of the day. We'll have Dara get up and negotiate. They are good negotiators, but they're tough. Sometimes they can be too tough. That's the problem. So we're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death. And we've told them that, and I've told them that, and I hope that's the way it works out. But it might not work out that way. We'll soon find out. Yeah, please.
Talking about unrest in American cities, you said, quote, "We have to go by the laws. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor." What changed now? Why is this situation different to not consult with Governor Newsom about this?
Well, the biggest change from that statement is we have an incompetent governor. So I talked about governors, but I didn't talk about he's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order. You had a disaster happening, and they now admit it was a disaster. I watched the chief yesterday, who's a good man, by the way, and he said, "Wow, we're lucky we did this because they were overwhelmed. You saw what was happening." So we did the right thing. Everybody agrees to that. But you have a governor who let the city burn down, didn't want water to be sent down to him. And I sent billions of gallons of water. I wanted to do it in the first term. He wouldn't do it over, I don't know, they have environmental reasons, but there were no environmental reasons. I think it's just a political philosophy. But it's lucky for the people in Los Angeles and in California that we did what we did. We got it just in time. It's still simmering a little bit, but not very much. Yeah, please.
What crime has he committed that would warrant his arrest? What crime has Governor Newsom committed?
A crime has he committed?
Yeah, to warrant his arrest, as you had
suggested
earlier.
I think his primary crime is running for governor because he's done such a bad job. What he's done to that state is like what Biden did to this country. And that's pretty bad. It's the wrong philosophy. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, many of them prisoners. They're taking up your health care. They're taking up your space in schools. They're taking up your hospital. And in many cases, they're criminals. And we have to do something about it. And we're doing something about it. I want to thank the incredible patriots of ICE and Tom Homan, who has been incredible, and Kristi Noem, likewise incredible. The job they're doing And it's like an unforced error. There was no reason for this. 21 million people were allowed into our country, and many of those people were criminals. And it's a shame. It's a shame. But we're getting them out. And I will say, I think it's a 95-5 issue, just like so many other issues, 95-5. And the Democrats lost an election in a landslide because they were on the wrong side of the issues. I mean, it's not even conceivable that somebody would do the kind of things that he did. And then, you know, you talk about projects. They want to build a train going from San Francisco to L.A., and it's costing hundreds of billions of dollars more than they thought it was going to cost. It's not even believable. To Brad and to people sitting here, would you believe that a train, it was going to cost X dollars and it might be 100 times X?
Would have paid for this for about 50 million American children.
You're right.
50 million American children instead of a 3-mile train track that never got built.
We could have put Lincoln in charge with no experience. He would have done a good job. I guarantee you that. All right, please, Peter.
Mr. President, have you gotten an update from your negotiating?
Thank you, President Trump. So it seems like Gavin Newsom likes the attention that he's getting right now from you.
Yeah,
it seems like he does. If you look at recent history, somebody who was running for president, you, who got arrested and had a mugshot, you could make the argument that politically that wound up helping you. Are you worried at all at this moment that talking about him getting arrested could be helpful to his political prospects? Because a lot of people think he wants to be sitting right where you are.
Well, in my case, it was a witch hunt, and everybody knew it. And I was able to explain that during the process. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And it was a total witch hunt. It's proven to be a witch hunt, and you see what's happened. In his case, it really is very obvious. You look at what's happened between the fires, I could name 10 things right now. We talk about the trains. We talk about all of the costs in California. You talk about all of the people that are flowing in, destroying life for everyone else. So, no, I don't think it's going to help him. I think it's actually very bad for him.
And right around the time that we were walking in here, the governor and the state attorney general said that they're going to sue you for sending the National Guard in. They're saying there's no invasion, there's no rebellion. The president is trying to manufacture chaos and crisis on the ground for his own political ends. Federalizing the California National Guard is an abuse of the president's authority under law.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You watched the same clips as I did. Cars burning all over the place, people rioting. And by the way, we stopped it. We were able to make it much better, but it still looked pretty bad. And in watching clips last night, people were saying this is really a big problem. And until we went in, if we didn't do the job, that place would be burning down just like the houses burned down. They were in big trouble last night, Peter. You know it. And the night before, and the night before that. And I feel we had no choice. I don't want to see happen what happened so many times in this country. I watched Minneapolis burn. Look at what happened in so many different parts of California. You take a look at what happened in San Diego. There's so many different places where we let it burn. We wanted to be politically correct. We wanted to be nice. We wanted to be nice to the criminal. And what you're doing is destroying the fabric of our life in this country. No, we did the right thing. We've been given credit by people that I would least suspect. Why I would say that some of the people that came in and said, thank goodness, they said, some of them, thank God that Trump got involved. And I'm very happy I got involved. And I think Gavin, in his own way, is probably happy I got involved. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
What do you make of the fact that he says, you want a civil war on the streets of America?
No, it's just the opposite. I don't want a civil war. A civil war would happen if you left it to people like him. And I liked him. You know, I always got along with him. Never had a problem with him. But he's grossly incompetent. Okay.
In London. Have you gotten an update from your team in London negotiating?
What? Louder.
Have you gotten an update from your team in London negotiating the China trade talks?
We are doing well with China. China's not easy, just like your home country is not easy, Dara. I think we're doing very well. They're over there now. I'm only getting good reports. It's a little early, but they'll be calling in soon. In fact, probably when I get back, I'll have my first call from them. We want to open up China, And if we don't open up China, maybe we won't do anything, but we want to open up China. It'll be a great thing for China, a great thing for the rest of the world.
Are you willing to lift export controls when it comes to China? Did you give your negotiators any sort of limitations?
We're going to see. Look, China has been ripping off the United States for many years. Nobody charged them 10 cents. No president had the courage to charge China for whatever reason. They didn't want to do it. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. I put on tariffs on China when I got in first term, and we took in hundreds of billions of dollars. And then I did it again, but I did it for a lot of others. If you look at the stats, the deficit last month was cut in half. Everybody was shocked. I wasn't shocked. I think a lot of the people at this table weren't, because they saw the billions of dollars that were pouring in, and the tariffs hadn't even started yet, just about. They were in cars. They were in some countries at a very minor level. And we cut the deficit in half. And it was a big story a couple of days ago. They said, I don't believe, one of the announcers on a business network went wild, said, I can't believe these numbers. Those numbers are good. The numbers are going to be very good. I think we're going to have a great 4 years. You know, we had the greatest economy in history during my 4 years. I think this one's going to blow it away. Yeah. Go ahead,
do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
Was she kidnapped by Israel, as she says? Was she kidnapped?
I find it. I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
And secondly, are you going to
Is that what she said? She was kidnapped by Israel?
Yes, sir. Are you going to get rid of the Tesla and the Starlink service that you have here at the White House?
No, I haven't heard that. I mean, I may move the Tesla around a little bit, but I don't think we'll be doing that with Starlink. It's a good service.
Where are you going to move it to? Move it around. What do you mean?
I have a lot of locations.
Actually,
I got so many locations that I don't know what to do with them all.
About the Tesla, did you ever see Elon Musk get physical with the Treasury Secretary?
No, I didn't.
And I tried to
They
ask...
did have an argument, but I didn't see a lot of physicality there.
And there was this New York Times report that he did not want to talk about, Elon Musk, that alleged that he, towards the end of his time in the White House, was blurring the lines between recreational use of drugs and medicinal. Do you think he ever had drugs here at the White House?
I really don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. Look, I wish him well. You understand. We had a good relationship, and I just wish him well. Very well, actually. Yeah.
About aid in Gaza, you mentioned now the flotilla. Do you have a response at all about Israel intercepting this boat? And can you give us an update on what's happening to the entry of aid into Gaza right now? We've had people being shot by Israeli forces who are trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Yes.
Gaza right now is in the midst of a massive negotiation between us and Hamas and Israel, and Iran actually is involved. And we'll see what's going to happen with Gaza. We want to get the hostages back. That's all I can tell you. Yeah, please, in the back.
Yeah. Back to California briefly. You said yesterday when ACMA reported that it was not insurrection taking place, but then on True Social a bit later, you'd said they were insurrectionists. After what you've seen
You're
now...
talking about in L.A.?
Yes, sir, in L.A.
I wouldn't call it quite an insurrection, but it could have led to an insurrection. I mean, that was a lot of harm that was going on last night. I watched it very closely. And it was amazing that the job that the National Guard did. And by the way, the police were working very hard also. But, you know, the police are given instructions to be politically correct. I said, no, you don't have to be politically correct. You have to do the job.
And on Elon Musk, do you plan to speak to him on the phone anytime soon? I know some...
Which one?
On Elon Musk, do you plan to speak to him on the phone anytime soon?
I haven't really thought about it, actually. I would imagine he wants to speak to me. I would think that. If I were him, I'd want to speak to me. And maybe he was already called. You'd have to ask him whether or not he's already called. But I'd have no problem with it.
If he calls you, pick up and speak to him?
Well, I don't want to say that, but I would imagine he'd want to talk to me.
You were supposed to get a counter proposal. You were supposed to get a counter proposal from Iran today. Have you gotten that proposal? And what is the main impediment?
We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we're going to wait till Thursday.
And what's the main impediment to getting a deal?
Well, they're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, you know, it's just not acceptable.
So this is the main topic for Prime Minister Netanyahu today when you spoke?
I would say, yeah. I don't know what else. I can talk about the weather.
Well, you can talk about Lebanon
also,
sir.
Pretty much,
the Lebanon,
that's the main topic.
Lebanon is a ceasefire
we talked
in Lebanon.
about Lebanon
yes.
also, yeah, we did.
What about Lebanon, sir?
Well, Lebanon's working very hard. They have a great new ambassador that I put there. Man I know very well. He's very smart. I didn't even know he was Lebanese. And I said, why would you want Lebanon? He said, I was born there. I love it. I love the people. I said, you know, it's very dangerous going to Lebanon. There are some ambassadorships that are wonderful. There are some that are dangerous. I said, Michel, his name is. It's a he, Michel, very elegant man. And I said, why would you want this? And he said, because I love my country and I love those people. I said, it's very dangerous. He goes, I don't care. This is not a man that lived on danger. He's a very successful man from here. And he wanted to be the ambassador despite probably a very dangerous situation he's going into. You see what's going on. But I had great respect for that. He loves that country. He loves it. He was born there. He loves the country. Yeah.
Mr. President, you've got a big, beautiful parade coming up on Saturday.
We do. What's
your biggest expectations for that? And I've got a second question in regards to Gavin Newsom. Go ahead and talk about the big, beautiful parade.
It's such a, thank you, Brian. It's such a, I think, important moment for this country. You know, 2 weeks ago, I was calling people and back and forth with leaders, including President Putin, including French president, including lots of different people. And all of them said, we're celebrating victory in World War II. And I said, wow, isn't that amazing? We're the only one that wasn't celebrating, and we're the one that won the war. Now, Russia did help. They did lose 51 million people, in all fairness. People would say, oh, he's sticking up for Russia. No, they lost 51 million people. And, you know, we can't forget that. But France was celebrating. And, as you know, Hitler made a speech at the Eiffel Tower. But when I spoke to President Macron, he said, oh, we are celebrating the great victory of World War II. And I think that's great that he was doing it. But we're the one that won it, and we weren't celebrating. I said to myself, you know, isn't that crazy? And I think it's time for us to celebrate a little bit. You know, we've had a lot of victories. We won 2 world wars, and then we go out and change the name of the forts where we won the wars. You go out, we win world wars from Fort Robert E. Lee, from Fort Bragg, from all the different forts. And what do? We change the name of the forts because we want to be politically correct. So a lot of them were changing back. You probably noticed Fort Bragg and others. But I think it's a time to celebrate our military. You know, we've rebuilt our military largely. Little low on ammunition. That's because it goes out very fast to other countries, one in particular. But we'll get that back very quickly. But we have a military the likes of which nobody has. Nobody comes close. We have the best equipment in the world. We make the best equipment in the world. There's no military like our military. We showed that with ISIS. I was told by the television generals it would take 4 years to win, and we did it in 3 weeks. And it was headed by General Raisin Kane, who's now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's great. Just left him. No, I think it's time that we celebrate. And I sort of have to laugh at these people. Well, you know, you're going to spend a lot of money. A lot of that money is being paid for by me and people that make donations. I don't know if you know that. A lot of it won't even come out of the military. I think I can say that, Susie, right? We have people putting up money.
We'll leave President Donald Trump there in Washington answering a whole range of questions from journalists this evening, this afternoon. There are more coming up, I'm sure, on The World from 9 o'clock with Yalda Hakeem. You can follow events in the US there. We'll return to domestic matters now. And the mother of a young woman who died after health and safety failings by an NHS trust has said patients will continue to come to serious harm if radical changes are not made. The 22-year-old Alice Figueiredo was being treated in a mental health unit at Goodmayes Hospital when she took her own life back in July 2015. Laura Bundock is with me now with more details. Laura, really distressing case, this one.
Yeah, it's been long, it's been complex, but really distressing. Alice Figueiredo was just 22 when she died. She was described in court as bright, talented, kind. She loved art, she loved dancing, she loved singing. She'd been head girl at school. And the year she died, she had accepted a place to study at university, wanted to become a mental health nurse to help other young people who were facing similar challenges that she had since she was a teenager. This 7-month trial, though, heard how the NHS Trust, the North East London Foundation Trust, which runs Goodmayes Hospital, where Alice died, and Alice's ward manager failed in their responsibility to keep her safe. So they've both been convicted of health and safety failings. They were acquitted of the more serious charges of corporate manslaughter and gross negligence manslaughter, but these convictions are significant and serious. Alice died in July 2015, and the jury heard how, while she was being treated at Goodmayes, which was a secure mental health unit, she tried to kill or harm herself on 39 different occasions, 18 of which was using a plastic bag. And despite this repeated risk, those bags remained accessible to her. Her parents complained about this, they complained about her care, but those bags were accessible to her. And on the 7th of July 2015, she used one to end her life. Now, the judge today praised her parents for attending court every single day, having to relive the traumatic details of Alice's death. But they were angry. They felt today was a bit of justice, but they were angry too at what had happened to their daughter. Let's have a little listen to her mum earlier.
NELF's senior management team were positively asleep at the wheel and oblivious of the failings going on behind the locked doors of this ward. There was a shambolic breakdown in the lines of accountability and governance. Frankly, a wounded animal would have received safer, more attentive, compassionate care at the vets than Alice received on this ward.
Well, Alice's own mother there used to be a hospital chaplain at the very trust where Alice died. She no longer works there. We've had a statement from a spokesperson for NELF saying our thoughts are with Alice's family and loved ones who lost her at such a young age. We extend our deepest sympathy. They said they'll reflect on the verdict and its implications, both for the trust and mental health provision. Alice's parents are angry, though. They've never had an apology from the trust. They say they hope lessons will be learned to stop any more needless deaths taking place to this day. And they appealed to the Health Secretary. They said, Mr Streeting, you need to hold these trust managers to account. I think what this case is, apart from being desperately sad, it is also a depressing reflection, I think, of wider issues and problems within NHS trusts who deal with these complex and challenging mental health cases.
Laura, thank you. Laura Bundock with the latest on the NHS failings there. Thank you. Well, if you have been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans at any time. The number is 116 123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. Frederick Forsyth, author of The Day of the Jackal and many other best-selling books, has died at the age of 86 after a brief illness. Well, joining me now to reflect on his legacy, Andrew Billen, feature writer for The Times and former TV and radio critic. Thank you so much for coming on to the programme tonight to remember Frederick Forsyth. How will you be remembering him?
Well, I'll remember him because I did an interview with him in October, maybe the last proper interview he gave to a journalist. And I'll just remember what an extremely lovely man he was to talk to and reflect on his career. And it struck me that he was as proud of his work, freelance work for MI6 in the 60s and 70s, as he was of his novels. And he was a very amusing man. We were actually talking about Sky's, a wonderful adaptation of Day of the Jackal, and he said he really wouldn't recognise the plot. and he couldn't. He would have sued. He couldn't have sued Sky anyway, and so he was really pleased to be given a consulting producer credit.
Yeah, The Day of the Jackal, of course, one of Sky's biggest hits this year. I mean, that's just the kind of legacy he leaves behind. I heard him described today as a realistic Ian Fleming. His books, of course, thrillers based in these, what we would consider other worlds, the worlds of espionage and such. But, you know, as a former foreign journalist, he was in touch with this world. He was very rigorous about fact-checking and grounding these incredible stories in fact and truth.
You're absolutely right. He did a tremendous amount of research for Day of the Jackal and for other novels such as Dogs of War as well. I think the thing about him was that he was fundamentally a journalist and quite proud of that. And he was criticised, I think, for, and even patronised for not having enough psychological depth to his characterizations. But when you got down to the nitty-gritty of what he was describing, the kind of rifle, for example, that the Jackal used, he was absolutely peerless. And he was so concerned to get things right. And it was that authenticity that shone off the page. And in his adaptations, we were interested in that Day of the Jackal, which I thought was fantastic, in the detail of the prosthetics and the rifle making and the armaments and all that stuff, as it were in the character, which was fleshed out much more than the Jackal of Freddie's book.
There's a documentary of his life due to be released this year called In My Own Words. And his literary agent said that, you know, he sat and watched it with him not so long ago. What else will we discover about Frederick Forsyth, do you think, in this upcoming documentary? Because for so many people, they will really only know him through the pages of his novels.
Yeah, he did write a fantastic autobiography about 10 years ago, I think, which is well worth reading and reads like a thriller at some points. I don't know what we're going to learn. There'll be some surprises, certainly, and I think some of the yarns may have to be taken with a grain of salt, because he was a fantastic storyteller. He loved spinning yarns, and it was the detail of them that made you believe in them. He was also very good fun to talk to.
Yeah, born in Ashford, Kent, he began his career in the Royal Air Force, one of the youngest RAF pilots at just 19 years old. It almost set the tone for the course of his life.
Yes, that was in national service. I think he had a pretty hard time at his boarding school before then as well. Yeah, I mean, he was very proud of his military service and of going up in planes and so on. It's going to be a very good documentary.
Yeah. Andrew Billen, really good to talk to you, feature writer for The Times and former TV and radio critic there, reflecting on the passing of Frederick Forsyth, the writer most famous for The Day of the Jackal, amongst many others, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first black Premier League referee, Uriah Rennie, has died at the age of 65. Rennie, who has been described as a trailblazer that helped shape the football community, revealed earlier this year that a rare health condition had left him paralysed from the waist down. Joining me now, Joel Mannix, the chairman and a founding member of BAMREF, the Black, Asian and Minority Referee Group. Really good to speak to you this evening. Thank you so much. Your reflections this evening on the passer of Uriah Rennie, really very much a trailblazer.
He was a great man. I'm sure the accolades have gone out today saying how much of a wonderful referee he was. He was wonderful, strong. He was the first black referee. And obviously he set the legacy for all of us to continue to go forward. Myself, he'd done that in 2009 when I saw him put down the whistle on his last game. And I thought to myself, well, I can do that. So that's what I did. I picked up the whistle and I wanted to become a referee, try and follow in his footsteps.
Yeah, and Joel, how has that journey been? Because for Uriah, it wasn't easy. He persevered and got to the very top of the game, becoming a FIFA-accredited referee. But since then, at the top level, no one like him.
Very true. I mean, we started, when I say we, Adji and myself started BAMREF in 2019 for Black, mixed heritage and Asian referees. We started this organisation as such, and the data then was 3%. 6 years on, we're still at 3%. So have we moved on? We talk about legacy. Don't get me wrong, we have been shouting and we have been asking questions, but, 3% and we're still here.
Yeah, what are the barriers? Because we talk about the lack of Black referees in the game, but we also talk about a lack of, the same problem in managers' positions, for example, in the game as well. For referees, what do you think the barriers are? What's stopping people from becoming the next Uriah Rennie?
Well, how much time have you got? Not really. But for me, I would be saying, for those that want to pick up the whistle and to become the next Uriah Rennie, of course you can. There are certain organisations, we've got, the FA are doing their bit, the PGMOL as well, they're doing their bit also for us to be, for the next referees and the next generation to come. I know there are a few within the system as such that will be coming and are knocking and churning at the door. I know we have Sam, we have Farai, we have Ruben, there's Adji. There's a few referees which are up and coming, and then there's the Core X program as well. So, the next referees are there. It's just for them to give them a chance on the biggest stage of the PGMOL and the Premier League, and then say, yeah, off you go.
Uriah Rennie sort of really lived by example, didn't he? Because he was a big man on community as well, in terms of, trying to bring people together on the pitch, but off it as well. In Sheffield, where he lived, very much a man of the community. I know he was Chancellor of the university there and, was involved in local football clubs. He really did lead by example, didn't he?
He did lead. And one of the things which, when we started BAMREF, was that we wanted it based for the community, so much so that we have an annual conference which we do for, as I said, BAMREFs and any other referee, the next one being July 20th. And it's funny, it's in Nottingham, so it's not too far away from him, and it's there for all, and it's just there. And on that day, I can say that there will be a great presentation to Uriah Rennie and for the card and great work that he has done.
Oh, well, listen, Joe, it's really good of you to come on and pay tribute to him tonight. Uriah Rennie, an absolute trailblazer and somebody that's so many people are coming out to pay tribute today. He was very highly regarded indeed. That's Joel Mannix, Chairman and founding member of BAMREF. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're going to cross over to Sky Sports News now for an update with Dave Fulton.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last year and a half or 2 years, and they're taking their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world. And utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure, and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
Allow yourself to be disappointed.
I enjoy passing on experiences, if it's about mental health, my career, the pressure I've been through, giving my experience to the younger generation is something that I really like. In earlier years, we didn't really speak about it, so it's just we get along and we go through tough times, but you hear now players basically after their career opening up about the struggles they had during. As ex-professionals, if we can give some sort of experience of insight, what to expect, or any advice we can give to the younger generation, I think it's only good. We can prepare them a little bit.
That sentiment was shared by Chelsea midfielder Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall.
It is important in this day and age to talk about it because there's a lot of people that go through it. As a youngster, I probably let things affect me a little bit more, and I was a bit more naive to it. But the older you get, the more experience you get, I think you just learn to not let it get you down. If you see negative comments or whatever, just don't let it get you down. Look, just see the positive ones and how you can use that in a good way. As I've gone along in my career, I've learned to deal with that in a better way.
Pressure is in the moment can be very uncomfortable. At the same time, it's also something what gives excitement to the career and the games. But yeah, if you really struggle with the pressure and you see it's affecting your performances, you know, I wish then in those days you could speak about it more, but I think in those days it was more like a sign of weakness sometimes.
It's that perception of weakness around mental health that the charity wants to break down amongst the young.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Let's take a quick look at the weather before we go.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It's going to be unsettled into the weekend with increasing temperatures bringing a risk of thunderstorms, but it should turn drier next week. Southern England will stay dry this evening, but it's going to be mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain or drizzle elsewhere, although turning drier in the north and the west. The rain will clear south and east overnight, turning increasingly light and patchy. There'll be just a few drizzly outbreaks left over southern Britain and the south of Ireland by morning, mainly in the west, and the odd shower for northern Scotland. It's mostly going to be mild and it's going to turn windy in the south. Central England and North Wales slowly brightening up tomorrow morning, while southern parts will stay rather grey with some patchy, drizzly rain. The north looks mainly dry and sunny, but you can expect some showers near northern coasts. It's going to be warmer everywhere and humid for the breezy south. Southern Britain will brighten later, turning dry, but there will be little change elsewhere. Britain looking fine and warm on Wednesday, while Ireland will be cloudier with heavy showers developing there.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
That's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Jonathan Samuels here in the hot seat. Up next, it's The World with Yalda Hakim. She'll be following events in America. Donald Trump has just been defending his decision to send the National Guard to LA. I will have more on that in the next hour.